Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Shannon Burth, and in this video, I'll be using SPSS to demonstrate how to do a one-way ANOVA. I'll be using the simulated data set that accompanies the second edition of the textbook, Quantitative Research Methods in Communication, The Power of Numbers for Social Justice. Thanks for joining us. In SPSS, the one-way ANOVA test can be found under Analyze, Compare Means and Proportions, One-way ANOVA. Similar to a t-test, we have an opportunity here to define our groups, but in this case, it'll be called factor. So we'll put our groups here. And then we also have an opportunity to select as many variables as we choose to put in our dependent list from our list of variables over here on the left. In our example, we're going to select political ideology variable. We're going to select the one that we recoded in video 1, so that 1 equals liberal, 2 equals moderate, and 3 equals conservative. So we'll have 3 groups. We'll move this over to the factor option. And then our dependent measure is going to be agreement with the statement, boys should play with action figures, not dolls. And this is measured from 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. I'm going to alphabetize this just so I can find it a little bit easier. Here we go. Boys should play with action figures, not dolls. Send it over to our dependent list. The next step is we're going to click our options box. And we're going to ask for descriptive statistics. We do this so that our output will include means and standard deviations for each group, in addition to the statistics that show the likelihood of observing the differences you see within those means if there are no such differences in the population. We can hit continue, and we can click OK. So here's our output. In our example, we're testing the hypothesis. Political conservatives are more likely than political liberals and moderates to believe that boys should play with action figures and not dolls. As we see here, we have our grouping variable that put liberal, moderate, and conservative. And here's our item. Boys should play with action figures, not dolls. So just like we did for the t-test, we can start by kind of eyeballing the means right here. We also have our sample sizes, so how many people were in each group for comparison. As a reminder, agreement with the statement, boys should play with action figures, not dolls, was measured on a scale of 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. A higher mean indicating more endorsement of this views. So when we eyeball these means really quickly, we can see that liberals were less likely to agree with the statement when compared to moderates and especially conservatives. In the next output box, we can look at the significance level. In our case, it's less than 0.001, which indicates there's a very low likelihood, 1 in 1,000 specifically, of observing the differences in the means among the people with 3 different political ideologies that we see in the sample when there are no such differences in the population. Just like with a t-statistic, it's a bit difficult to interpret the meaning of the F result on its own, except to say that generally, the bigger it is, the more likely you will have a statistically significant result. Once again, the logic is that the larger the difference observed in the sample among the groups, the more likely those differences are also occurring in the population. There are 2 degrees of freedom reported in an ANOVA result, and they are reported in parentheses after the F with a comma separating the 2. The first degrees of freedom is calculated from the number of groups in the analysis minus 1. In this example, there are 3 groups, so 3 minus 1 equals 2. The second degrees of freedom is that first degrees of freedom number subtracted from the sample size. If we had a hypothesis that predicted political conservatives would be more likely to think that boys should play with action figures rather than dolls compared to political liberals, then we would say that this hypothesis was indeed supported by the data. In the output, you can see that conservatives had stronger endorsement of this view compared to liberals, and the chance of obtaining this result when there are no such differences in the population is less than 1 in 1,000. That's all I have for you today. Be sure to join us in our next video, where I'm going to demonstrate how to test relationships using a chi-square test.